last week we made a color wheel. This week we're going to explore values. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a square. I'm just going to hold down my shift key to make a perfect square. And I'm going to change my guides to inches instead of points or picas. And I'm going to make these squares exactly 0.75 inches in both directions. And then I'm going to set them up for 7 stages. So I'm going to hit Command C, Command V. So copy and paste. Copy and paste. I already copied it, so I'm just pasting. All right, so now I have 7 squares. What I'm going to do is I'm going to construct a value study to go from white to black with this value study. I'm going to group this. You know what? I'm not going to group it. I'm just going to copy it and paste it. And I'm going to create one that will be a value study for red shades and red tints. And then orange shades and orange tints. Then yellow shades and yellow tints. These are going to be far too big for my one page, so I'm going to grab the whole thing, reduce it basically in half, copy. Actually, I'm going to grab this much of it. I'm going to copy it and paste it. That'll give me the other half of the color wheel. And then we'll go from there. Okay. So here's the basic deal. I want to go from white to black in my first value scale. Now, whoops. There we go. Okay. A lot of people think the obvious thing to do is to, put this center gray here and then make grays around it. My opinion is that the center gray, whenever I see it here, looks just a little bit too, a little bit too light. So I usually skew it, a little bit too dark. So I skew it lighter just a little bit. And then I'm going for a light gray that's pretty gosh darn light, and then a gray that's somewhere in between those two. Now, that may not seem very mathematical or scientific to you, and I agree. If you want it to be perfect, then what I would do is I would set this to be 50, and I would set this to be something like 35 or so, and then, do this one at half of 35, which is going to be about 17. And when I say 17, I mean 17% black. One of the things that's going on right now, whenever I just set it based on this color space, is that it's not using black. It's using a combination of colors in order to produce this. So if I want it to be only using my K channel, you probably noticed that these grays look pretty gosh darn similar to what I already had. I'll talk about this in just a second. Let me finish doing the math in my head. Let's go with 67. Oh, I forgot to do away with the other colors. Let's go with 83. And then we need a black stroke as well. Okay. So now I have a pretty decent little value study going from, lightest to darkest in terms of what the K channel, the black channel, can produce. So here's the thing. Most of the time when we are working in print, we don't just print pure black when we're trying to do rich colors, because pure black as a K only kind of option isn't a very rich looking black. It's not as black as it could be. We usually put some extra colors into black when we're printing in order to make sure that it reads as truly black in the final output. I'll talk more about that in the future. The term that a lot of people use when they talk about this pure black that looks great when it's printed on the page is they call it a super black. And we'll talk more about how to produce one of those in the future. But for our purposes today, all we're really trying to do is understand how value works in relationship to color. And so here's what I want to tell you. A lot of times when we're organizing color, we organize colors in very specific ways. We do, these monochromatic ideas, where we do analogous color spaces, or we do complementary color spaces, where we do split complementary, so on and so forth. And explaining what all of those are beyond the scope of this video. I will talk about color combinations at length in future videos. But right now, what I want to say to you is that even if you are dealing with one color, the way that we usually think of one color is we're thinking of one color and all of its tints, shades, and tones, meaning all the ways that we can vary that color from lightness to darkness. So, for example, if I want this particular square to be this red, and then I want it to migrate towards white, so let me choose the square, choose the white one. Okay, so right now what I want to do is I want to set up all of the possible versions of this red going towards white. I could do this mathematically, like I could sit down and look at the color formula for this red, which again is 100% magenta and 100% yellow. And then I could say, well, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got 5 variations in between it and 0. And so maybe, see if I went 80, 60, 40, 20, that wouldn't work out. So it's got to be, so I got to think about it I got to think about it more completely. So it would be like sixths of 100 in order to make it get down there. And that might be an easy way to do it, right? So, let's see. So if I pull out my calculator and I do 100 divided by 6, I come up with about 16 and 2/3. So let's say that I'm going down about 16 points every time. So this would be 84. Whoop, cancel. I'll select the next one. I'm going to make it red, but this time I'm going to go 84 and 84. And then on the next one, I need to take it down again by 16. So I'm going to go like 60, 66. Let's do 65. Because every once in a while I'm going to need an extra number because of the 2/3 thing. And then I go down again by 16. So oh, sorry, wrong thing. So I'm going to go down again. So it'll be like 32-ish. Well, it wasn't selected. Actually, let's go to 15. Okay, so you can see very clearly that this is migrating this color from red to white, and it's doing it in a fairly consistent way. Another way that I could have figured that out, and this is definitely the cheating way to do it, is to have gone to the gradient tool and made this a gradient, and instead of having red, or pardon me, instead of having black, choose red, and then keep white on the other side. And now I can basically go through and just choose the colors of the gradient along the way, and you can see how much this gradient matches the gradient that I've figured out mathematically, right? Okay, so this having been said, the other thing that I want to accomplish is I want to go from red to black. Okay, so getting from red to black is essentially the same concept. Oh, sorry. I was talking instead of thinking. Still doing that. Okay. So in a lot of ways, this is significantly easier, right? Like I can just take this red and I can apply it to all of these squares, and then I can just go through on each one. Oh, sorry. I can just go through on each one and add a little bit of black to it. So if I'm going to go up in 16 or 17 kind of points, let's do 16K. Let's do 32K. Let's do 50K. Let's do 68K. Let's do 84K. And you can see that that is a solid transition from red to black, right? And so now I essentially need to do the same thing with every other color. Um, and um, and so I'm going to stop talking and just do it. You should do this as well, figuring out these values in terms of getting from the pure color to pure white, getting from pure color to pure black, and then we also need to examine getting from a pure color to each one of the gray values that we've set up. And I'm not going to do the gray values this week. I'm going to do the gray values next week. But getting from a pure color to a pure white is known as creating a tint. Getting from a pure color to a pure black is known as creating a shade of the color. Each one of these are shades. Each one of these are tints of the original color. This is a purely saturated color. These colors are less saturated because they have white mixed in with them. This is a purely saturated color. These colors are less saturated because they have black mixed with them. Same thing's going to happen next week when I go from the pure color to a gray, and I'm also going to show you ways to get to grays that are more fun than just straight up using a percentage of black. But that's again beyond the scope of this video. For the rest of this video, I'm just going to complete doing tints and shades for each one of these additional colors, and I hope that you're following along and building the same value study. Here we go. All right, so that gives me my set of tints and shades related to each color in the spectrum. And, visual artists, specifically painters, do this kind of thing all the time in order to figure out how they can reflect materials in an image that they're working on. We're going to talk about how and why this works in a future lesson. Right now, I'm just trying to get through the basics of how to construct a value scale. We will come back to this. Hopefully you finished your value scale just as I finished my value scale. Next week, we're going to work on tones. This week, we worked on tints, which is going from a pure color to white, and shades, which is going from a pure color to black. And then tones are going from a pure color to a gray value. And we'll talk about that next week.